All right, so today we're going to have one of my favorite authors ever on the Beyond the Book podcast, and his name is Mark Schaefer. He just wrote a new book about how AI is changing our customers and what that means for all of us as storytellers. So I'm very excited for you all to dive into this conversation with him. He's a legend in the marketing world, and recently you probably heard me talk about his book, Audacious. I love that book. It inspired a lot of things in my life, including the Barbie House, which is this retreat that is happening to basically probably already happened by the time this is published. So very cool moment to have him on right as we're about to leave this Barbie House retreat, where we're all coming together to learn about how we can go beyond the book, transform our stories into different mediums, and create awesome things for our readers. Mark's going to come on today to talk with us all about that. I am super, super pumped, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Okay, we're going to hop into it now.
All right. I am so excited, Mark, to have you on. I say this, and it actually really does mean something for me because I read a lot of books, and you are probably, like this in all honesty, top 3 favorite author of mine. I first found you from Belonging to the Brand. In that book, I had it recommended to me by a friend, and I was like, ooh, this book's great. Then there was Audacious, and I was like, oh, Audacious, like loved it. And now recently you have How AI Changes Your Customers, which was like also amazing. So I have just so much that I want to talk to you about. Obviously, like I'm just super excited to have you here. But let me start with a big picture question that I think Audacious ties into, and that How AI Changes Your Customers deliberately tackled, which is what is changing about humans right now and how we interact with ultimately marketing, product, stories, because there's something big changing in humans right now.
I wasn't planning to write this book. As you mentioned, I published Audacious earlier this year. Earlier this year, I was part of a research project that brought together 300 futurists to consider this impossible question: how will AI change humanity by 2035? The research report that resulted from that was fascinating because they came to some consensus on things. And we're in a world where nobody really knows what's going to be next with AI. But these 300, they were like physicists and technologists and philosophers. They came to some consensus on what was going to happen. And so I thought that I would really have a regret if I didn't write this book, because it's a big idea. It's an important idea. It affects all of us, really. Nobody's talking about how it's literally rewiring us as humans, how we're turning to AI for empathy, for friendship, for love, to help us make decisions where we are offloading our cognitive processes. We are de-skilling ourselves intentionally in ways that will never go back. And so I thought this was worthwhile talking about. And there are really 5 or 6 big things I cover in the book. And I think the one that probably affects us the most is that we are increasingly relying on AI to make decisions for us. We're trusting AI to make big decisions like, what college do I go to? What car should I buy? Who should I marry? We're starting to trust AI with ethical decisions and value-based decisions. And as I said, I was excited about this because it's happening right before our eyes. We see it happening in our friends and our family. We see this bubbling up in accounts in the news, but no one's written a book about it before and really gotten into the science of it. And so I think it's a very exciting idea.
Yeah, and you cited a bunch of studies that were maybe concerning. I think a lot of us have seen these headlines now, like the MIT study that shows that if we outsource a lot of our critical thinking to AI, it turns out you're not as good of a critical thinker. And some of this is intuitive. Obviously, a lot of this has been debated. But what was really interesting is there was also a sort of hopeful slant and how AI could also make us maybe better humans is the wrong word, but it's not just going to degrade us. Can you share what that part was? It's good.
It wasn't all bad. I think there's a quote in the book from a man who was an important mentor to me, Robert Crosby. And he said, there's no such thing as a weakness, just overdone strengths. And it's the same with AI, right? If we have AI fuel our creativity, fuel our curiosity, we can gain wisdom, right? I have AI. If I'm excited about something, I'll go into AI deep search. It'll create like a little mini book for me that I can read about this thing that I'm interested in. Now, that's great. I'm a curious person. It's fueling my curiosity and my wisdom. But if you're lazy, the other side of that, if you rely on AI as a crutch, then you're not going to do the work. You're not going to gain any new knowledge. We see this happening in our education system today. Many people, they just want the answer. They don't want to do the work. They got the answer, but they're not getting the wisdom. And they're coming out and they really don't have the skills to fill jobs and to compete. So there is a positive side. Absolutely there is. And the way I end the book, and I feel this way about myself because early on, I was very depressed about AI. AI can write a book. And for me, that the work and the sweat and the suffering of writing the book is part of my meaning. I go through that so that someone like you could say, I love your books. I trust your books. It's not going to be filled with fluff. It's something that means something to me and I enjoy. So to me, that work is part of the journey. And now I see if AI can write the book, what happens to me? Where do I fit? How? And so you move beyond that at some point and you say, all right, AI is not going away. How do I embrace this to make me a bigger, bolder, more impactful person? And Michael, something I've been struggling with. I'm at a point in my life, I want to mentor people at scale. And it's hard to do because it takes a lot of personal attention. I want to teach more people. I want to mentor more people. So I created a MarkBot. I put in all my books. I put in all my blog posts and everything, all my classes. And today, that is the #1 page on my website. And people say that they love it and they're learning things and they're enjoying it. And I don't really care if people use it, honestly, because it's just an experiment. I just put it out there there's no business behind it. I'm not making any money off of it. It's completely free. It's completely private. So I'm not getting data. I'm not getting information. It's an experiment to just see, can I be a bigger, bolder, more impactful person? And the answer's kind of coming back, yes. And that only could have been done by AI. And that's exciting.
I feel like this ties into the core theme of Audacious, which is like ultimately trying to stand out in this world. And one thing that I read the book coming away from was a lot of the audacious ideas that one could imagine, especially you mentioned Mr. Beast, and I worked for him, and these are grand spectacles, certainly audacious, but also a lot of money. And one thing I've learned is that you don't always need a lot of money to be audacious, but I think the
Right.
instinct of a lot of people is that how do you be audacious on a budget? What would be your advice to someone?
I think in most businesses and in most industries, the bar is very low. Most marketing is so boring. It's not very creative. And so many industries, especially in B2B, are ripe for disruption, just to be a little bit different. And one of the things I was very careful about in this book, because we've switched book topics now, we're talking about Audacious. I was very careful about, look, there's a lot of big, bold examples in that book, but there's also a lot of examples that cost like little or no money. And I think one example is the book itself. So if I wrote a book called Audacious, it better be audacious, damn it. The cover of the book is a QR code. The QR code, I uploaded the book to AI, and AI is creating abstract images based on the stories in the book. So if you hover your phone over the cover of the book keeps changing. It's an infinity cover. Now, it didn't really cost me anything. I literally did something that's never been done in the history of the publishing industry, but it was just a matter of mashing up things. I have this window of opportunity to combine AI and a QR code and traditional publishing to do something that will delight people, that will make them talk about the book. And here's something fun. I get a report that shows me how many people are using the QR codes in the book. Some people are doing that QR code multiple times because their children are having fun with the book. Their children are playing with my book, which I just think is awesome. In the book, I have this framework about what is marketing. It's about telling a story that connects with people, brand marketing. That's what it's about. And so it's about disrupting the story, where the story is told. It's disrupting who tells the story. Mr. Beast has been masterful at that. But you don't have to be Mr. Beast. You don't have to be a big media agency to do this kind of thing. And there are lots of examples in the book of people who did this with like no money at all. I'll tell one little story from the book. It's always been one of my favorites. It's this guy up in New England. He's the marketing manager for this company that sells and rents office equipment. So boring, right? And people hate copiers and printers. They just literally hate them because they always fail at the wrong time. Nobody says, I love my printer. So he created a contest, invited people to destroy their printers on a video in the most creative way. And if they won, they got free ink for a year, and their favorite charity got free ink for a year. And they had people like blowing up printers and driving their cars over printers. And the whole thing just went viral, and it was on the mainstream media, and influencers picked it up, and it like 10x their business. And his budget was zero. His budget was absolutely zero. And the big idea there was that he handed the mic over to the customers and just said, help me tell this story. And it was the video, and the customers created the content. So it was a completely disruptive way to tell the story and to build his business. And he literally had zero budget for it.
Oh, that's disrupting. I'm sure you've encountered this as well. When you work with some companies, obviously they have marketers already, but so many solopreneurs and all the folks listening, for the most part, are creatives. The idea of marketing can feel like tough. And I'll tell you what made Audacious amazing for me is by the time this was my action after reading the book. I was so fired up and I was feeling like marketing should be fun. That was the takeaway. And not just fun for the consumer, but fun for you as the person doing it. If you're not having fun, this is probably a good proxy. So what I did literally is rented a Barbie house, not a joke, in Vegas, inspired by you, because you talked about your retreats that you hosted in cool locations. I'm going to host a retreat here. And just as a kind of a joke, posted a bunch of social media. And then before this podcast, posted this morning just to share with people. I haven't done the meetup at the Barbie house yet. It's in 10 days. By the time this is out, this will probably come out like the weekend at the Barbie house. And I've already posted about it. So all this to say that like, I've had fun with what you're doing. I've seen it. I've loved it. But what would be your advice for someone who's like trying to start to be audacious? It feels intimidating. It feels scary. And you almost have to give yourself permission. So it's like, what would you do if you're just working with someone and they book a one-on-one call with you and it's, Mark, I'm struggling to be audacious.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
It's funny that this very question you're asking, that really emerged when people started to read the book.
Yeah.
So the book, first of all, at the end of every chapter, it has like actionable ideas. These are just gold. These are like the secret sauce of the greatest creatives in the world. And I got to meet them and interview them, and they just handed this stuff to me. So number one, there is a lot of stuff to prompt new thinking in this book. But I also got this same question, Michael, about, okay, like, how do I get started? So I actually created a on how to get started, brainstorming and idea generation to help you get started. I used that workbook for the first time at this retreat, and we did a real-time brand activation in 90 minutes. We had 3 teams divide up into disrupt the story, disrupt the media, disrupt the storyteller. And they used exercises from this book to get it going. And we came back, and in 90 minutes, we had an entire brand activation strategy that was magical. So there's a workbook available on Amazon that I created.
The disruptive media and disruptive storyteller is like really getting me thinking, because I think AI as well actually provides opportunities for different creators to have different types of storytellers. Like I'm thinking from the
Yeah.
perspective of an author, like you already now are having a storyteller be you, but an AI version of you. And you can think about doing this for like your characters. You could create
Yeah.
a chatbot or an AI version of your character talking. I have this friend, Novi Callum, who literally had one of their characters is literally in the video, like with them. So like they're filming a TikTok.
Oh, I love
and then
that.
He brought the character from the book into the video. So it's like they're talking to them. And
Maybe if you're a heavy Instagram user, you already know about this, but I logged into Instagram on my laptop instead of my phone where you just scroll. And it said, use AI, create with AI. I thought, what's that? And it allows you to create an AI character on Instagram that people can talk to. So if you could have a character from your book and you put in all the parameters and create what they look like, and you could create an Instagram character that would interact with people, your readers on Instagram. That was something I just discovered 30 minutes ago.
that is so interesting. Instagram's been rolling out some like interesting features on multiple fronts, like with trial reels and things like that.
Other thing that I tried for this book, have you used Notebook LM?
Yeah.
All right. This was really amazing. In fact, to me, it crossed the line. So for your listeners who are not familiar with this, Notebook LM is a Google product. And one of the things you can do is you can upload a large document, even a manuscript, and then you can have 2 synthetic. So in Audacious, one of the first stories in the book was about an experience I had at South by Southwest and how there was this magnificent drone show. And it was so amazing. People left their restaurants and they were standing on the street taking pictures and video of this drone show. And it challenged me to think, if I had to create a story that was so great, it could make people leave a restaurant to go see it, could I do it? And the answer was no. And that was one of the seeds behind this book. These 2 made up synthetic AI characters are talking about my book. And the woman says, the book starts off with Mark telling this story about this episode he experienced at South by Southwest. And the male character said, yeah, I was there.
It's like
The AI character was at South by Southwest and saw this drone show. I thought, that is going too far. He's making up his own life.
And you bring this up in how AI changes your customers. I feel like they're both very related in my mind. It's the notion that connection and belonging are this human thing, except you cite, and I wrote this down. This was like a kind of a shocking stat to me. And when I reflect on it, maybe isn't that shocking, but I'm mostly reflecting on it thinking that I wasn't a teenager that long ago, and I've never had a relationship with an AI companion. But 72% of US teens have had AI companions. That's what you mentioned in the how AI changed your customers. And I was like, wow.
I think it's 8% of them have a meaningful, significant friendship with an AI bot.
Yeah, you said romantic, I think, like explicitly. That was how it was described, which is stunning. You would think that's like a fringe behavior. And 8% is not fringe. That's okay, not majority, but pretty
well, 8% in a short period of time. It's the same thing that we were talking about, where there are positives and negatives to everything. I was very intentional about illustrating positive impact AI was having with someone that was struggling with mental health. Because we hear all the bad stories and the creepy stories, but it just proved that AI gives the illusion of compassion and empathy. And sometimes that's enough to get people over the hump, especially if they don't have a therapist or they can't afford a therapist. So there are positives to this,
Yeah.
but the negatives are going to be, and I really can see this happening where a real relationship, it takes work. It takes compromise. It takes understanding. If it gets to the point, and it's getting there apparently, where AI is just so authentic, so believable, so empathetic, and so compassionate, we're seeing people prefer to have relationships with these AI entities, these non-human AI. Even 2 years ago, there was a story in the Wall Street Journal, and it profiled 3 women in Japan who had AI boyfriends. Literally, this was their boyfriend. It was the only love interest that they had. And it followed them over the course of a year. And 2 of them fell away from it for different reasons. But one of them said, this is going to be the person who I love forever. An AI bot never gets bored. It never rolls their eyes, never criticizes you, never rolls over and goes back to sleep when you're upset in the middle of the night. They're always there for you. They're always validating you. And for a certain group of people, that's going to be very rewarding.
Yeah, and then it comes to question, which you bring up aptly here, which is this idea of my brain goes to what does word of mouth look like when you have AI friends, and you described it as trust transfer. And that to me, it is really interesting. And you posit a few potential solutions to it. Like I found out about you from a human friend, but it's very possible that I could be going to an AI chatbot that I also might consider a friend and
Yes.
say, hey, I'm looking for really interesting books about marketing. Can you recommend some to me? And then your book might pop in there and I'd be like, oh, it belongs to the brand, Audacious. Tell me about them. And then we talk back and forth. And I'm like, oh, I'm sold on it. Can you buy it for me? And that really isn't science fiction anymore.
Oh, no, it's happening.
How do we navigate this as authors? And I guess maybe even a better question is, you now have your own chatbot. So that could be part of how you're navigating. But how are you navigating that?
Okay, so it's a big question. I'll try to be as succinct as I can. Really, there's 2 strategies we need to look at, and both of them are covered in detail in the book, by the way. Everyone listening is working on their personal brand, right? It's our last defense against AI, because if people know us and they trust us, they will always come to us as human beings instead of simply relying on AI. So part of working on that personal brand means creating content like you're doing with this show. You're being consistent, you're being generous, you're being helpful, you're probably being even vulnerable at times, and people love that. And that's going to build your personal brand. So that works very well with SEO, and it also works very well with AI, because AI is insatiable for content and data. Now, here's where it gets a little emotional, because what we hear from a lot of authors is, I don't want AI taking my stuff. Now, this is going to sound weird, but maybe you heard about this a few months ago. There was like this little utility. You could put your name in there and see if your books are in AI.
Yep.
All of my books are in AI. And at first, I was pissed. Now, here's the other part of this. When people go in and they're looking for the best marketing books, or they're looking for the best digital marketing consultants, my name is coming up on AI. Why? Because I'm out there giving away my information. So to be part of the system, you've got to show up in the system. So step number 1, and I mean, you got to talk to your web person and toggle that off. Let AI in. Give away your content. And I know that's emotional. If you're going to show up in this new world, you've got to put that pride aside. It's the immortal glue that holds AI together. It's us, it's our content. I've resigned myself to become part of the immortal glue.
It's definitely one of those things where when and we'll have to see where this goes on a 10 or 15-year time scale, but the act of an LLM itself is probably not like that immoral. It's just maybe who's building it, why they're building it, what they're specifically tuning these things for, that I think will become a more public conversation over time. But you mentioned also in Audacious, you mentioned you open up with the obviously South by Southwest example, but there's ways to obviously break through.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's the second part. It is your personal brand. I'll give you an example that in the book I talk about how AI planned a trip to Paris for me. I have celiac disease. I can't eat wheat or bread. And so I have a friend in Paris that is also celiac. She said, when you're in Paris, you've got to go to this bakery. It is the very best bakery because I trust her. I trust her more than anything that AI is going to say. So when AI gives you a recommendation, you're going to consider it. When your trusted friend gives you a recommendation, you're going to do it. So this idea of, again, building your personal brand, building your audience, maybe building a community. I wrote a book called Belonging to the Brand about how do you build a brand community. I think every author should have not just an audience, but a community. An audience is one way. But if you have a community, people start to know each other. For example, like I have a blog. People might love my blog and they might love me through my blog, but they don't know each other. It's not a community. When you bring people together, either offline or online, and they start to know each other and they trust each other, and all that goodwill and friendship spills over to you. And they're going to hear about you in this community and they're going to take that and share it with others. And we talked about personal brand, very important for authors. We talked about community, I think, super important for authors, not just building an audience, but building a community. And then we talked about really being serious about creating content, not just a book, but creating other types of content, a podcast or a video or a blog on a consistent basis and giving it away to AI.
Yeah. And you can even not only give it away to AI, but that's what I'm almost confident you did that to train the chatbot. I know there's multiple programs out there that allow you to basically just upload a knowledge base, which is content you created. And that's why it sounds like you and it is a sort of amalgamation of you. It's because of that. The community piece is really important because so actually it was the first book I read of yours was Belonging to the Brand. And I think what really resonated with me at the time was that similar, most of your books, I feel like they go against the grain, right? You're not trying to, like you mentioned, right now, like the hot thing to talk about would be like 100 great ChatGPT prompts to come up with a higher performing UGC ad on Facebook. And mind you, I think there's still merits to things like that, but the first principles are what I think you really are great at. And in the book Belonging to the Brand, it was, for me, this pretty mind-blowing thing on that. A lot of these tactics that become the sort of marketing paradigm and what everyone talks about are a race to the bottom, and how to really like build again these long lasting relationships. Community can be something that A is like ill defined. It's hard to actually know what it means, at least as an outsider. And then B, for a lot of marketers, a lot of creative people, building community might not be something that is instinctual or even what we want to do. Yet you're telling us like, no, this is really important. So how do we get over those humps? What is community and how do we really build it?
Well, look, I'm an introvert.
I wouldn't know. You are very well spoken.
Well, because it's me and you. I'm not in a crowd.
Fair.
I love talking to people like one-on-one, or maybe even like 3 people together is fine. But boy, it's really hard for me to be at a cocktail party or a big event. So first of all, you don't have to build a community. There are lots of communities already out there that might already be talking about you. When I built my business, I guess it's 16, 17 years ago, one of the greatest successes I had in terms of getting new customers was being involved in LinkedIn groups, and people would be talking about different marketing problems. I would write a blog post to answer that person's question. And I'd say, boy, this was such a great question. I wrote a blog post just for you. Here's the link. Now, I'm answering one person's question, but there could be 1,000 people. They click the link and you got 1,000 people coming to your website. So there are lots of communities out there where you can just be a member. You can start to create relationships and friendships and connections, and maybe eventually become like a leader in the community for places that are already built, depending on your genre, your niche, or what you're writing about. I ended up building my own community. It's a community devoted to the future of marketing. It's about teaching each other, nurturing each other, because I found that to be relevant today, you can't do it on your own. You need help. So I did start my own community, and it's not huge. I've got maybe 150 people in it, but it's just the right size for me. I'm not really looking to make it enormous. It's not like a big money-making thing or whatever, but here's the difference, Mike. If I have a new book out on Twitter, I have 180,000 followers on Twitter, and I have a new book out, and I put it on Twitter. Hey, everybody, I have a new book out. How many people will buy it? Almost none.
Right. Yeah. Because how many are going to see 180,000?
It's like throwing a bottle into the ocean. Now, if I have a blog and I say, hey, everybody, I have a new book out. How many people will buy it? A lot. Because they subscribe to me. They're waiting for something like that. Now, in my community, if I say, hey, everybody, I have a new book out. How many will buy it? Everyone. And then they'll say, how do we help you promote it? That's the difference.
That is such a rephrase what community is.
It's the ultimate emotional advocacy.
Yeah.
The community is an advocate for you and your work. And that is the best advertising you can ever have. Because if you say, I wrote this great book, people roll their eyes. That's what we expect you to say. If you take out Facebook ads and say, oh, I have this new book, probably not going to believe it. But when their friends and family say, wow, this is a great book, or people in your community say, come on my podcast, because I want everybody to know how great this book is, that you're having me on your show and you're saying these kind words about me, because in your audience, people they've opted into you. They believe you. And whenever you say, boy, Mark Schaefer is one of my top 3 authors, they're going to believe that. That's this advocacy. Think about if you've got a whole community of people like that who are willing to stick their neck out for you. The people in my community, when I have a new book out, putting I can't believe all the stuff they're doing. They're putting these carousels on LinkedIn with their favorite quotes from the book, and they're doing all this work to help me. And I'm not even asking them to do that. It's just that we're all in this together. We're in a community. We're going to help each other, just like a neighborhood.
No, this makes so much sense. And I think I didn't really think about community in this way until you just framed it this way to me, even after reading your books and all the things. Because I think thinking of community as a group of super spreaders is really important, and cultivating the conditions where they want to do that. And I think making people feel like they're a part of something is special, and they can buy into that message and want to spread it, which brings me to probably the last chapter of the pod that I want to cover. I think it's probably a really important one to end on, because how I view your books and your work is that if you read it, you'll understand the core of like why marketing really matters. But there's something deeper than the core of that, which is like what makes us human, and as you say, what's not changing. And I believe your last, literally, it was timed pretty well. I think your last blog that you published, or very recently, it was a blog that I found, was all about
Today.
You talk about, what is actually humanity. And if we can take that essence of humanity and serve it, we'll build something durable. We'll create durable stories. We'll build a durable brand or fan base. But then that poses the question, like, what is the essence of humanity, and what's going to remain after we become more and more closely integrated with AI?
I took a shot. I addressed that at the end of the book, but at the end of the book, when I was asked to participate in this research project, how will AI change humanity by 2035? I started thinking about what is humanity? And today we talk about AI. It's going to change our buying behavior. We may create these new relationships with AI. We may have AI do parts of our jobs for us, and I'm worried about losing my job or whatever. Now, but I reframed it thinking about, would we be talking about those things 300 years ago? A human is a human, and the essence of humanity. So what is it? And so I came up with a list. And again, I don't know if it's right, but what were people worried about 300 years ago? And aren't we still worried about this today? We want our families to be safe. We want our children to thrive. We want to have healthy food that tastes good. We want to celebrate. We want to feel joy. We want to feel peace in our heart. We want to thrive. And the idea I was getting at, and this was inspired by one of my favorite quotes, and I know a lot of people don't like Jeff Bezos, but love him or hate him, he had a great quote. And this was at the very beginning when Amazon was taking off. He was interviewed by Wired magazine, and he was asked, what's the technology that's going to change everything that you're most excited about? He said, well, that's a very interesting question. But a more interesting question is, what isn't changing? Because that's how you build a business. I think it would be impossible 10 years from now for people to say, I want higher prices, slower delivery, and less choice. Impossible. Those aren't going to change. The company is about faster delivery, lower prices, and more choice. And we're going to use technology every way we can to do that, because those things don't change. That's how you build a business. If you have a business where you're tuned in to what really matters to your customers, if you're protecting their needs, if you're serving those human needs, and there's lots of them, just like safety, there's lots of ways to feel unsafe right now. I might feel less safe now just because of cyber attacks and deep fakes and credit card fraud, hacked 3 times in the last 2 years. So safety is still big, maybe more important than ever. And that's just one example. But if you have a business that's working on that, you're going to be fine, no matter what happens with AI, no matter what happens with technology. So just calm down. Let's reframe this. Humans are still humans.
I think that's such a good way to ground us. And ultimately, yeah, like if new technology, new products are honestly our stories that we're telling as marketers don't, at the end of the day, hit home at something deeper about us being human, I think that's a really beautiful way to cap it off. But before we actually go, what I'd like to ask is just one or maybe two final things. One is obviously we want to know where to find you online. I'll link down to your individual books. Two is I'm just curious, almost selfishly. You obviously wrote this book over the summer in terms of, it feels like a bonus book, how I changed your customers, because it seemed like that was like not something you're planning. But what do you see next for you? What is the next big frontier questions you're asking yourself about marketing? And if you don't know or you're just exploring, that's okay. But I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, Michael. I don't know that right now. I know what my next project's going to be. And that is, I wrote the best-selling book on personal branding called Known. And that is coming up on its 10th anniversary. And so I want to come out with a second edition, a revised edition of Known. I've learned so much. I've coached hundreds of people. And so I've learned a few things. I've learned a few new tricks. And so I'm going to do a new edition of Known next. That's going to be my project next year. It's a little scary because if you look at my career, I've written a book about every 2 years. And I only write a book when I see that big question.
Yeah.
That the people are struggling with. And I think if I could crack that code, this would really help a lot of people. And I don't know what that is right now. Because even if I have an idea about it, it takes months for it to really click in. And I've got to be sure this is the right thing to do, because writing a book is such a sacrifice and it's such a big risk and it takes so much time. I've got to be absolutely sure that I'm working on the right thing.
Makes total sense. If anything, that's such a better way to approach it all, is like you have that, you can tell like this comes from the heart and you feel that creative energy. And I have to answer this question. I tend to be the same way as well. This was so amazing, Mark. I think I certainly loved it. Great to be able to speak with you.
I loved it too. Thanks for your great questions. Thanks for being so prepared. And thanks for really
Well, I read all your books because I loved them.
I know.
So, yeah, it's pretty easy to come in prepared. It was a pleasure to prepare. For folks who haven't maybe gone down the rabbit hole of Mark Schaefer like I have, where can they start?
You don't have to remember my name or how to spell it. You just have to remember businesses grow. That's it. So you can remember businessesgrow.com. That's my website. I've got a blog that's free. I've got a podcast that's free. I've got books that are super, super cheap. And I also have a thing. If you click on books, I've got a little app on there that helps you decide what book is best for you. So, Pete, where do you start? Because I've written 12 books now.
All right. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Mark is the best, and I really do recommend reading his books. I'm a huge fan of his books, so please check them out. Link down in the description. One last thing before we go is, if you want to transform your story into a show or a movie or a trailer, anything to bring your book to life, then you'll want to check out Creatorwood. It's launching on December 1st, which is just a few weeks after this podcast airs, and it's an all-in-one platform to transform your story into a film with AI. So I hope you join us. It's a very cool platform. You can use it all on your own, and our target is that you can make 1 minute of film that you're proud of in 1 hour, meaning you can make a full movie in just 60 hours of work. That's our target. We're getting really close, and I think by the time we launch, which will be not too long after this is published, we'll be there. So I'll see you all soon. Go to creatorwood.tv to sign up. We have a spicy new landing page. And as always, don't forget, together, we're about this.